I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but if I'm being honest, if I'm being really real, I'm afraid to heal. I'm afraid to heal and end up in the same place. I'm afraid to move past what I think I've overcome, past what I think I've learned, just to end up in a similar situation. Because how many times have we learned and put on new ways just to find out that underneath it is still pain, underneath it is still insecurity. And so we say, I no longer get angry, I know how to calm myself down. But underneath it is still anger and frustration. I'm no longer stressing over the little things, but underneath it is a worrisome mind. And so I'm afraid to heal, not because I don't think that it's real, but because I'm afraid of putting on when I should be taking off. If we don't actually change what's within, we will repeat the same things over and over. And so I wanted to talk about how we can start to actually look at ourselves and accept who we are and then move towards change, because the greatest transformation happens when you look at yourself and say, I am enough. I am not perfect, but I am enough. It's not that I'm afraid of healing. I want to heal, I want to do better, and I want that for all of us. But what I am afraid of is putting on these identities and putting on these layers to hide what is truly inside of us. And so let's get into how we can start to accept ourselves, flaws and all, and move through that. Pride can be described as having an excessively high and positive opinion of oneself and the qualities that make up our character. Without an adjusted sense of self that gravitates towards the humbling reality of who we are, it's almost as if it's inevitable to be led by the image in which we present to ourselves and others. You cannot change until you accept who you are. An appealing but oftentimes skewed self-image can hinder transformation through the rejection of true self-acceptance. When we put on an image of perfection, when we put on an image of everything's okay and I can get through this, and having kind of this toxic positivity, we hinder ourselves from healing. We hinder ourselves from actually moving through the things that we need to move through, because we're rejecting the self-acceptance that needs to come first. Sometimes we can heal and think that we're doing the right things and moving in the right direction because of the image we portray to ourselves and others. Real healing comes from a place of true self-acceptance, really looking at yourself with all the good and all the bad. Be brave enough to look at yourself. Be brave enough to look at yourself, because it's in doing that that you can start to do the things that you genuinely need to do that will set you free. It's kind of like going to the doctor's office with an upset tummy, right? You are going for the purpose of an upset tummy, but you are also a little bit ashamed and a little bit embarrassed that you have a bit of diarrhea or a bit of constipation. You don't really want to tell the doctor that, because for some reason you are embarrassed to say that. Now, how is the doctor ever going to know what to prescribe you, what medication to give you, what care plan to prescribe for you if you do not disclose all the information? The same thing goes with ourselves introspectively on this healing journey, right? You cannot actually get to the root of any issue until you are honest and open and willing to accept what you are experiencing, willing to accept the cycles that you have been in. Sometimes we overlook the bad. It's hard to look at our open wounds. It's hard to see ourselves broken. But the bravery in doing so is what allows us to move towards a direction of transformation. And so the fear that comes along with facing yourself should be present, should be there to guide you, to protect you from all the things you shouldn't do.
How is it?
All the things that you can potentially stew. Beware of your affinity towards your vice. When you've been on a path of like not maybe making the best decisions, you need to have that fear present and available so that you don't do the same things over and over. That fear is kind of like a warning. You don't want to be overly fearful where you're afraid to make any change or any decisions. That's kind of leaning towards the state of anxiety, being overly fearful of the possibilities that could happen. But you also don't want to be fearless in that you are constantly heading forward with a speed and an energy that gets you into trouble. That is not good either. And so understanding that fear is kind of there as a protection to kind of give you that signal of maybe we should think twice. In a way, your vice is kind of like advice. We all have our things that call to us louder, that attract us, that bring us in closer. It isn't to say that we are any less of a person because of it. It isn't to say that we are any more doomed than the next person that also struggles. And so your vice is like a flag, showing you what to accept so that you can start to see what's underneath the layers of your identity, personality, and protection that you have worn. You see, this is why self-acceptance is so important. Your shortcomings, your flaws, they are flashing signals, flashing lights saying, hey, this is something that needs to be paid attention to. Hey, this is something I need you to take a deeper look at. This is something I need you to accept about yourself. Let's start to look at our vices as opportunities to move forward in transformation. Yes, your vice might be negative, right? Vice definitely has a negative connotation, and it is negative. It's a flaw. It's something that holds you back. It's your Achilles heel. However it is you want to explain it, but our vice can actually be a flag that directs us in the direction of the transformation that we need to go in. Without actually seeing and understanding who we are, we can never really get far. Can you imagine hiding yourself for fear of yourself? Masking yourself for lack of understanding? Because that's exactly what it is. A lack of understanding your depth, a lack of understanding your complexity, the complexity that makes humanity. I can't imagine it being worth it. I can't imagine it being some sort of trade-off. You know, a thing that I have been thinking about lately is ego. The way we understand ourselves and our identity is through psychological processes. Our ego is really what makes our identity. Now, we have all heard of ego in this very negative connotation. If someone has a big ego, they are full of themselves, they're full of pride, they're just not so pleasant to be around. But also at the same time, when someone has a not so much of an inflamed ego or doesn't have much self-identity, that can also be problematic as well. And so in the same way that fear needs to be calibrated and needs to kind of find this middle ground, our ego also needs to take that same approach. Our ego is kind of like a lens that we see ourselves through. It's what mediates between our internal and external world. It's a buffer that keeps and holds, that exaggerates or limits. It's what makes our identity. Too much of it and we're overconsumed. Too little of it and we're nowhere to be found. Understanding where we lay on the spectrum of identity through the lens of our ego, our perceived sense of self, can help us understand our motivation, desire, and even our fears.
And so what happens when our ego's out of whack? When our sense of self is inflamed, not because we want it to be, not because we believe it to be, not because we hear it to be, but because we feel it needs protection.
Writing is almost a practice of telling on yourself. Write how you feel freely and you will start to see who you are. The same thing goes for talking. You know when you're with a group of friends and you guys are just talking and talking and talking, and by the end of the conversation, you're like, oh yeah, now I understand it, right? It wasn't that you needed your friend's advice or that you needed whatever it was that you're searching for, but you just needed to vent. You just needed to release, to express. And when you do that, the patterns will start to reveal itself. When you do that, you will start to realize whatever it is that you needed to realize, whatever that solution will appear. It happens very often. It happens to me all the time. I will be talking and talking and talking, and all of a sudden I'm like, it clicked. Oh, I get it now. I just needed to say it out loud. I just needed to see myself. And we do that through writing and through having conversation with friends or people that we trust.
Until we're damn smack on the hard, cold floor. Until we're looking at ourselves and wondering how did I even get here? How did I even manage to get this far? That's one way that it can go. The other is kind of a never-ending merry-go-round. Up and down we go, never really taking control, building our resilience to tolerate the cycle that doesn't actually lead to anywhere. That feels like movement, that is movement in a way, but ultimately has no destination that's anywhere great. The tolerance is admirable, but the ignorance is a shame. A shame to be so willing and so willing to move towards your inevitable downfall, because you can't actually heal until you accept yourself. You can't actually stop the cycle. You can't actually stop the up and down movement until you accept yourself. And I know it's so much easier said than done. I know it almost sounds like a cliche, and it is. But it's the simple things that make the most sense when they need to. It's the simple things that often ring true.
If you came here to get a radical transformation, tips, habits, new routines that you can do, I'm sorry to break it to you, but it is the simple things. It is the simple things that lead to the big things. And so the simple things of writing and speaking and talking and expressing, being honest with yourself, these things that we have kind of heard over and over that are very much so cliches, those are the things that allow us to move in the direction of true self-acceptance. Okay, so before we head out, I want us to take a couple seconds to journal. And so if you have a journal, I have mine here. As you can see, I write a lot take out a piece of paper or anything that you can kind of write on, and we are going to be making a list of the things that we can start to take off rather than putting on. Like we talked about throughout this whole video, a lot of times we put on when we should be taking off, and real self-acceptance happens when we start taking off those layers that no longer serve us. And so take a couple minutes to write down a list of those layers that we have been wearing. What are the things that you have been putting on, that you have been carrying with you? My old self is buried alive. She isn't dead. She's burned and kept down from the discipline and the wisdom I've learned. She's kept in check. My old self. Maybe it's shame for the things that you have done in the past. Maybe it's anger that you are afraid to let go of. What are those things that you have been carrying with you? Start to write down a list of them. And if you don't feel up for writing a list, maybe just have a session of writing where you can freely write about how you feel after watching this video. What are the thoughts that came up? What are the sort of things that you started thinking about as you were watching this video? Take a couple minutes to write down all of it and let it sit. Don't make any conclusions, but let it sit. Okay, so as I was journaling and kind of writing the things that I were thinking about, I wanted to share some of the things that I wrote because I felt like it was pretty good. Like, this is honestly how I started writing poetry, was from just journaling, because by the end of rambling and scratching all my feelings onto a paper, I would come to some sort of conclusion of what it was I was feeling, and then I would just write a poem about it. And so that's kind of what happened here, a little short thing that I wanted to share with you. My old self is buried alive. She isn't dead. She's buried and kept down from the discipline and the wisdom that I've learned. She's kept in check. Who can relate? So that is it, you guys. I hope you found this video helpful. Definitely comment your thoughts below and give me pointers on kind of what you guys like to see on this channel, because I have been trying different styles and different things, and I'm not really sure what I want to do with this YouTube channel or the direction that I want to take it in. And so definitely give me your pointers. Like, did you like this video? Is there something more that you would like to see from me on this channel? I definitely want to give you guys what you come here to see. I don't want you to be disappointed with the videos that I make. And so comment your thoughts below. I really do appreciate all of your suggestions, your comments on production, your comments on topics, your reflections that you leave in the comments. They're super helpful for me to kind of get an insight of where you guys are, because this is a community that we're building between me and all of you guys. I think we're at like 28K, like me and 28,000 of you guys. We are building a community here. And so let me know how I can better serve you guys and the things that you want to see in this channel. I keep saying bye, and I keep saying bye for now, but I think I'm actually gonna log off now. I think this is it. I think I've said all that I want to say. I don't want to leave you guys because I'm having a lot of fun doing this. I really am. But I think that's it. I think we'll catch up next time. So last but not least, the final goodbye. I will see you guys next time. Peace.